Hi, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well on this fine morning. So, my name is Khadija, and I'll be the moderator for today's forum, which is the future of Malaysian diversity. And so, we have our list of diverse panelists here. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves to the audience? Whoever wants to start first.
Okay, let me start. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Udaya Sangkarespi, a writer. I write mostly in Bahasa Malaysia. I write fiction and non-fiction. That's about it.
Hey, Joe.
Hello everybody, my name is Jo Kukathas. I'm a theatre maker. My company is the Instant Cafe Theatre Company. We've been around 32 years this year, and our work is mostly we used to do a lot of political comedy, a lot of political satire, and we do a lot of issue-based theatre. And essentially, I think we're advocates for freedom of expression, but using the arts to sort of talk about how it is important to have an open society and a society where we can have dissent and dialogue.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Teo Zuyong. I'm from Parti Muda, a youth party. We're starting to be a third force. That's the ultimate goal, I guess. We just finished our first Zoom session with youth all over the country, and I was the Northern coordinator because I'm from Penang. Nice to meet everyone. Thank you.
My turn. Hi all. Thank you for being here on a Saturday morning. I'm Sing Fei. You can just call me Sing Fei. My background is mostly academic. I'm doing a Master of Research in Social and Behavioral Science right now. I'm also working for Project Dialogue in a project called Leveraging Media for Advocacy Objectives. And it will be a 6-month initiative. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nabila. Firstly, thanks to Project Dialogue for inviting me here. And then I'm representing Democracy Discourse Series. In short, it's an 18-month-long project to advocate for political discourse and media literacy. So yeah, you guys can call me Nabila.
Okay, thanks everyone. So before we start, I would like to just inform the audience that if you guys have any questions, there's ask the question there at the bottom of the screen. So feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we'll be addressing it later after the forum. So yeah. So first and foremost, I hope everyone's doing well in this, post MCO period, despite a lot of political anxiety going on right now. And I was just wondering that, because as you can see, during MCO, we see a lot of niche movements, in the sense where we see a lot of movements such as Kita Jaga Kita, and from Kita Jaga Kita itself, a lot of other campaigns and movements sprouted out from there. And supporting local businesses as well to support the nation in a period like that. So I was just wondering whether you guys think that if MCO, if anything, has fostered a genuine sense of togetherness amongst Malaysians, or what do you guys think?
Who's starting? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you should mention names. It'll be easier for us.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I'll start with Nabila. What do you think?
Oh, Mia. Okay. So yeah, in a sense where it's true that MCO, I think the reason why a lot of people say that MCO have brought a lot of Malaysians together is because we finally have a common element that we can share. So during the quarantine period, a lot of content being made is revolved around quarantine, because everyone goes through the same thing, and there was a lot of movement that a lot of people could relate to. So yeah, I do agree on what Kadi said just now regarding the sense of togetherness. to start off. Yeah.
If I can jump in,
Yeah.
I think for me, my experience was maybe a bit more complex. That I think that, of course, I think the Kita Jaga Kita movement was really great, and it tried to say, well, the government may not necessarily be there to help you in your life, so we should help each other. But I think that for me, especially very early on, and it's continuing even to now, is the treatment of migrant workers, the treatment of refugee communities. And I think the lockdown, the barbed wire, all those things I thought were really distressing. And I think people try to counter this with the migrant juga manusia hashtag, and also the Kita Jaga Semua. So I think, unfortunately, I saw a lot of xenophobia come to the surface, which I think is a kind of an indication of the deep-seated racism we have in this country and the racial politics, that I think that we find it very hard to get past race-based politics, and it always is an act of othering other people. So if we're always othering other people, then yes, we are together, but we have this in common, but we must find a common enemy. And I think this is really unfortunate, to the point that a few days ago, I think it was posted on social media, there's a restaurant in I can't remember, somewhere in Selangor, where they said no beggars, no salesmen, and no Rohingya allowed into this restaurant. And I think that kind of thing is indicative, I think, of the way in we use language against people, the way that we are quite happy to put everything in racialized terms, which I think is our racial legacy that we need to deal with very fast.
Good
Okay.
point.
Yes.
I think during the MCO, togetherness, yes, but I think it's mostly online, right? Because everyone, in fact, sometimes it gets pretty isolated, and you're just in your own. The only people you come into contact with are the food panda riders and grab food and all that. But talk about the migrant issue. I think that the discourse, like what Nabila is working on, the discourse is a bit, it's not talking about the things that matter. Like, for example, how do these people end up here? How, for example, in Penang, you have almost 500,000 Rohingyas there, and of course from Bangladesh and all that. How did they get in here? No one asked that question. Somehow everyone just assumed that they entered secretively, by stealth, and just come in and just end up here. That's not the truth. That's not the truth. Actually, the truth is that, for example, since BN days, there have been 4 companies, for example, 4 companies that specifically take over work from the immigration department, and their job is to give permits to these immigrants to come into Malaysia. Per head, they get, let's say, assume at least 1,000 ringgit. So it's in their interest, actually, these companies exercising immigration functions, to let as many in as possible. But no one is talking about that. One of the companies has even links to the former deputy prime minister, his political secretary, right? But no one is talking about it. Everyone is just thinking about getting them out. But if that's the case, then how did they end up here in the first place? And of course, the authorities, those who have the biggest stakeholders, it's in their interest for this course to continue in this direction as much as possible, so that no one takes a careful look at them. So I think who are advocates, who are passionate about this issue, we should highlight this. We should highlight where are they coming from.
But I think there was a lot of organizations who were trying to highlight this. A lot of, including Tenaganita, they were constantly putting out articles, and they were getting a lot of hate. So there was a lot of hate directed towards all the people who work on migrant issues, and to the point that actually they had to form kind of self-help groups because of the online attacks, and that's why they created the Migrant Juga Manusia movement and try to do art projects and try to do advocacy to try to educate people. But it was very closed. It was very hard for people. People didn't want to listen to this, despite the advocacy. Actually, I thought that was quite a disturbing thing, that people didn't want to hear. They only wanted to see them as enemies, and of course, the government attitudes didn't help that, and people bought into this. I think there's been quite a concerted effort to make them the problem. Yeah. So how can we counter that? How can we say, well, what is diversity in this country? You allow people to come in, they work here, they build lives here, and then when you are in a crisis, you suddenly stop seeing their humanity. Yeah, and you don't listen. People don't want to know. Yeah.
Okay, my experience to deal with this diversity is more during MCO, is more related to writers and readers. Under my organization, Kumpulan Sasluan Kavian, we organize creative writing workshops for Malaysians. Of course, we encourage them to write in Bahasa Malaysia about the diverse life of Malaysians, different races, different religion, different background. But when MCO started in March, we were at the beginning we were sort of lost. How are we going to continue? Because we always have face-to-face workshop, but we justified, we made changes and we went online, which was at first a little bit troublesome for most of us, and from my experience, what I saw is that it gave us a better chance. I think Daniel mentioned just now, we were connecting with people. You see, during workshops, the physical workshops, we are there, we do the writing, we go home. But when we were connecting online, we had a better chance to see their lives. For example, now we are looking at each other's home, right? We see Joe's bookshelf behind them, and we see Helmut, Daniel, and other things. So it gave us as writers to understand the other writer better, the problems that they were going through, the issues that they are facing. Of course, during this online workshop, we were also discussing about issues, maybe about migrants, maybe about Malaysians, fellow Malaysians, people who are losing their work. And we realized that in the diversity that we are talking, yes, there is xenophobia, and how are we going to handle it as writers? So we actually took it positively. And that will be reflected also in a compilation of essays, short stories, and poems, which is to be published in December. Because so we worked on that anthology throughout this MCO. So the uniqueness is that we understood each other as writers, we understood the community better, and we knew that we are supposed to be the voice. I mean, Joe does that through theater, Daniel is doing that through Muda, and Nabila and Singfei, we are doing it in our own way. And I believe this is the interesting part, where everyone plays our own role in doing what we know best, because we understand the diversity, we see ourselves being in the middle of all this political scenario, what is happening in our community. I would take that positively. It gives us a chance to do better in what we are supposed to do. Back to you, Khatijah.
Sorry? Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's also interesting to note that, during the MCO, I think because a lot of us were online, and then so there's a lot of public scrutiny as well on a lot of things. So one of them was obviously the Black Lives Matter movement. And so in Malaysia, it has been translated in the context of, police brutality towards the Malaysian Indian community. And I think it's interesting to see that, we're all united in that sense of, there's the MCO, and then but there's also that translation of us being online more than ever. And and so, but we also see there's a lot of on online we see that there's a lot of macam things macam cancel culture as well. And just wonder if you guys think whether cancel culture in itself contradicts the freedom of expression here in Malaysia.
Actually, when I saw that cancel culture in the email, I wanted to ask. So, what do you mean by that? Actually, cancel culture.
From what I understand, let's say on Facebook, people are commenting on what we write. We just block them, right? We block them because we are canceling them off the discussion. We are not giving them a chance to talk because their opinion might be different from us. I believe that's what we are discussing here, right, Khatijah?
Yes.
I think also another word that people always associate cancel culture with is deplatforming. So in a sense, if a public figure is known to have a scandal, something right? Then there'll be a mass shaming, and then that person will get deplatformed. Most of the time, it doesn't really work. in US, because that's where mostly where cancel culture is originated from. But in this case, now in this generation, cancel culture doesn't only apply to public figures, but also
Commoners.
yes, citizens. So I could say I love pineapples on pizza. People can cancel me for that. It's true.
To shut
It
you up,
happens.
something like that.
It happens. So yeah, regarding Kadi's question, I just think that there is always a line between saying something and then accepting the consequences for it. Yes, you can say something for it, but where is the line you should draw? Should you cancel them? Should you, ruin their career? That's a question that is still going on right now.
Yeah, I think it's not just that. I think cancel culture in itself is that you can post something that you did when you were younger, on Twitter, especially from 10 years ago. And then now we see that, people can just trace back to your old tweets and be like, oh my God, we should cancel her because maybe she still has like these thoughts, these underlying thoughts in her, So we should like call her out.
And I think that's also sorry, Xingfei, you go ahead.
Okay, I will go. I think that we should first put this cancel culture phenomenon, let's call it phenomenon, within the broader historical context in which we are.
Yeah.
Years ago, I remember even before GE14, politicians in Malaysia are already talking about, Industrial Revolution 4.0 or something like that. So the whole nation is going digital. And the MCO pushed this forward, and we are sort of it's sort of a full-blown digitized nation right now, and all the symbolic battle that we are fighting in are all digital, and this is I think this is something that we have to take into account, so that now that why this sort of Western cancel culture thing is happening in Malaysia suddenly, because all the important discussions are going on online.
Yeah.
And so all the issues with diversity, with bad treatment of migrant workers as well, including other things, will all be debated and struggled over online now.
Yeah. And online forums are not necessarily forums where one can go very deep.
Yes.
So unfortunately, the debate becomes quite shallow, and people are reactive more than they are listening. And I think this is, for myself, observing cancel culture, and I agree with you that it's something which we've imported without understanding its history, and we've imported as a kind of buzzword. So we're using this word cancel, or we're going to cancel you in a way that's getting more and more trivial. And I do feel also it's often a distraction, to maybe a more important debate. I see a lot of people spend a lot of time on Twitter arguing about who should be cancelled, as opposed to actually doing some work, and helping those who are in need, dealing with poverty, dealing with refugee issues, dealing with B40s. And I feel a lot of the energy is expended in a way that's really unnecessary. And that's what I find kind of slightly disturbing, because it's a substitute for work.
Yeah. I totally agree with Joe, because you see, we in general, we are spending too much time with the cancel culture and getting into arguments which does not help us to progress. As you mentioned, it's better that we use that time, the energy, the effort to actually do something to make things better for us and for everyone, the people whom we claim to be fighting for. That's a good thing, Joe, and I believe that those who are watching us today will also agree and take that into account the next time we see people talking about cancel culture, or when we want to do that ourselves, we will start thinking it's better that we do something beneficial rather than getting into useless arguments.
This will sound off a bit from Xingfei's point. We are all part of forces bigger than us that we have no control over. I think a lot of the interactions these days are mediated through the online medium, and I think they are not getting enough scrutiny, right? So for example, all this, we talked about what people have been talking about is the movie on Netflix, Social Dilemma,
Yeah.
I think that is a factor, right? All these disagreements, all this ugliness, all this mess, they have existed. They have existed, prior to many generations before, but it was never so apparent, so naked, so
So
in your face.
amplified. Yeah.
So amplified, yeah, right. So why are they now? Why now? And who is winning? Who is benefiting from all this? But you know, for example, the government. We talk about, in Malaysia, we tend to blame the government. Government need to do this. Political parties need to do that, this and that. But we cannot do anything to Facebook. You know what I mean? It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to do anything to Facebook, big multinational companies. So maybe, I don't know, just off the top of my head, maybe the UN should do something. Maybe there should be a, international MNC regulatory body, something like that we don't have yet, because then right now it looks like they have a free reign to do anything that boosts their profits to the maximum.
Well, I think that's one of the interesting things in that film, Social Dilemma. I mean, because it is presented as being a dilemma which we need to deal with. And I think it's interesting, all the people who were interviewed on that film said that, they started off thinking, well, this can be a force for good. These are tools, right? But maybe like as with children, we don't know how to use these tools very well. And we're sort of struggling to figure out, who's, as you said, who's controlling these arguments, and what is the purpose of having people argue. And that's why I said, for me, it's like a distraction. It's like entertainment, right? We have so much entertainment now because to distract us from things that maybe, again, we need to do. And social media has become a form of entertainment. It's like the Hunger Games, except with so much bloodshed. And I think that takes away our focus from thinking about thinking more deeply about the lives we're arguing about, because it's easy to get online and be in front of a computer and just tap away very anonymously. And I think, and of course, we all talk about the fact that, would you say the same things to somebody face to face as you would say anonymously? Yeah. And I think that's the difference between the arguments in the past when people met and the arguments now.
I think just to sum up what everyone has said, the reason why people like to cancel each other is because it's much more easier to condemn people than condemn the ideas. If you don't want to talk about what's actually happening behind the scenes, people find it much more fun to condemn the people there and then, kill each other off. But nobody really wants to talk about the real issue behind the actions of that person. So, yeah.
Gosh, your description makes it sound like a computer game.
Okay, it's interesting that you said that, because I see that happening. I mean, Aina, I see that happening on both sides, on the left and the right.
Yeah.
Right, left, right, center. Everyone is canceling everyone. Do you have any comment on that? Because the left prides itself as being more enlightened and all that. So why is it also happening on the left, right?
I think it's happening more on the left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, do you have anything to say about that?
You say first.
No, you say first.
I sort of agree with that, especially from the I use this word very carefully. We can write 5,000 word essays to justify this, but for the sake of discussion, from the liberal left, yes, it's coming a lot from the liberal left, because like Nabila said, it is easy to go moral. When we're discussing it is easy to go moral. That's the easiest way, and it is more difficult to go critical and even go radical on ideas, and by being canceling, the liberal left would think that they are radical. They are actually doing stuff for culture or for society, for the betterment of society, by not discussing things, by following a set of ideals that is context free, that is Western imported, that we can build a better Malaysia. So that's the easier way out. So that's my perspective. But work from the actual left, real left in Malaysia, like Parti Socialist Malaysia, they are doing authentic stuff. So So even in the left, there is
Yeah.
a wide
Yeah.
variety. So yeah, that's from me.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say. That's why I asked you. That's why I asked you to answer it, because I was like, I pretty much feel like we have almost the same answer. But yeah, I agree with whatever you said, lah. And
Yeah. It's very interesting your use of the word authentic, actually. You know, it's
So my view is that, as considering of what I've just said about the historical context in which we are, now there are a lot of sort of big headlines on the internet that don't mean anything in the long term. For example, I've listed down some examples before the start. So we have that Sheraton move by Midin months ago, and then the Sabagar episode,
Yeah.
and then recently we have the Anwar thing. You have several days of excitement among the sort of Malaysian national consciousness, and then it sort of faded away. Nothing happened. No institutional reform or rethinking happened. So in our context, it is really the challenge is this one. How do we get the headlines while doing also authentic stuff? Something that is real, that is structural, something like that.
But I think, but I think there's also a lot of like curation online, because, starting from YouTube, with the use of like clickbait, for example, just so you could watch the video. And then now there's a lot of like curation, such as, Nabila's popular with this TikTok, and then on the Twitter sphere, because I feel like on Twitter it's becoming more of an emotional bubble, and it's becoming more toxic. So with like moral policy, and like cancel culture. So I think the important question is, how do we sustain that discourse on social media, and how will it be facilitated in a healthy way, especially knowing that it's difficult to reach that middle ground, or like.
Well, I think it's interesting what you said earlier about how people think it's being radical, right? But in fact, it's actually people being conformists. I think because everybody wants to be part of this thing, so it's actually a herd mentality. And I think what I observe is a lot of conformity. I remember my father, who was a journalist, was always fond of quoting Groucho Marx, who said, "I never become a member of a club that would have you as a member." Right? But nowadays, everybody wants to be a member of the club, and I wonder whether social media has pushed us into feeling that our sense of self-worth comes from being part of a club. That makes us feel that we belong. Whereas, in fact, before, people were quite happy not to be liked. Utai, you said earlier how you're arguably the most hated writer in Malaysia. But, and you're quite cool with that, and I think that's good. But nowadays, everybody feels that their self-worth and, in fact, their career path only makes any sense if they are liked. Whereas, I think of people like Bob Dylan, who famously said, "Always be on the outside of whatever side there is." And I think actually the non-conformists are the only people who are going to make things go forward. But social media has tricked people into thinking that they are all radical, whereas in fact they're just conforming to the same thing.
Yeah. See, this makes me think, do you remember the avatar thingy on Facebook, which was famous about
2 days ago?
2 days.
2 days ago?
2 days ago, you see, nobody is into it anymore. That goes back to what Joe just mentioned. Everybody, it's a herd mentality. Everybody wants to be there, and people forget. And Sing Fei mentioned, they want to be there, then it's lost. Nobody talks about it anymore. But the hatred is, of course, it's being online every now and then. If we look carefully, we are very familiar with the cyber troopers, and recently it was revealed that people are being paid a lot to go online and spread hatred. See, so we are aware that such thing is happening. And sometimes when we post something on Facebook, or it could be a comment section of an online news portal, when you read the comments, you can just guess that it's purposely there. The hate speech, the hate comment is there purposely to engage. It's a bait to make people, commoners, genuine people to go ahead and spread more hatred when it was put there in the first place by these cyber troopers to spread hate. So what we can do, people who are conscious about the avatar syndrome and people who are aware of the existence of cyber troopers, and we know about the politicians who are fighting each other. So what we can do is put a stop, not by cancel culture, but by simply not carrying forward the comment made by these people, because we know, yes, they are being xenophobic, they are talking bad about migrant workers, they are talking about let's say using the word killing, for example, they're downgrading Malays or Indians or Chinese. So we know that it is there for the purpose of spreading hate. So what we can consciously do is, okay, that's your opinion or that's your comment, just leave it there. We don't even have to put a like to it or put a sad face to it. Just ignore it. It will work. It will work. It has
The
worked.
thing is, but my observation, I mean, ages, but a lot of old people seem to lie on all these things. And why? I don't understand. Even my own parents, why? I don't understand. They will just like screenshot a comment and they say, yeah, this person is right. Yeah, this person is stupid. Like, care, you just read the article and move on with your life. I don't understand. Is it just me, or I don't know?
I think
Okay, I'll speak as an old kid.
emotional, I think.
Yeah, I think there's also the WhatsApp groups, right? Forwarding
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
But you
I
see,
truly
I think-
should know
I think-
about this politician and all that. Who
But
cares, right?
I think that the thing is that you have to understand how communication works, right? I mean, we've used the traditional modes of communication. So in my generation, I'm an old person, right? Is that you, if you said something, it was something because you wanted somebody to listen to you and have an opinion and communicate. Nowadays, people just put things out there just to say. Lepas angin, I don't know what it is. So I think an older person then will read something and think, well, if somebody's bothered to write it, it's because you must take it seriously. It's like, I remember my sister, when she first went to the US many, many years ago, she was very surprised. She would go there and she was at university and she'd be walking, to her class and people would stop and say, hi. And so she'd always stop and say, oh, hi, hello, how are you? And of course, they were not stopping saying hello to say hello. They were just hiya and then moving straight on. She found this so confusing. And then her friend said to her, you're so weird. How come you always reply to people when they say hi? And then she realized, of course, it wasn't. It's just a noise that you make as you're passing somebody. But it takes, if you're not brought up on that culture, how are you going to relearn fast, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think we're all kind of struggling with this new media, really.
It's also the way we as a society, especially, and I notice this more in maybe secular segments of societies, we give a lot of prestige to the media. Like if someone tells you, I'm reading the news, oh, that must be really important. That must be, he's doing something worthwhile with his time. I think there's too much prestige and glamour, really, to give. And not just any news, it's instantaneous news, a plane just crashed in some corner of a country you've never heard of. Oh, that's really important. I gotta read about that. I gotta comment about that. And I think that there's also something that we need to look into as well.
Can I just go back to something, I can't remember who brought this up earlier, which I thought was interesting and worth maybe us talking about is, you said that some of this sort of cancel culture or some of these conversations are particularly being used by the left much more than by the right. So of course we all know about cyber troopers, etc. But I think for us here, what about people we regard as allies, people we regard as being interested in freedom of expression or interested in diverse opinion and interested in dissent, and yet actually what we are finding is that we're kind of eating each other. We're not really helping each other move forward. So I think I was wondering if anybody has any thoughts about this and why this seems to be very prevalent, I think, in Malaysia.
I'm interested to hear what Nabila has to say, because I think about this cancel culture, moral policing on like reaching that middle ground. I think it's something that you do, isn't it, in democracy?
Yes, in Democracy Discourse Series, we had a project about. We did a sentiment analysis in which we analyzed a lot of tweets by Malaysian users and kind of analyzed and made a report. We did like a lot of infographics on our Instagram, but one of the reports that we found was majority of the tweets by Malaysian users are more negative or positive instead of neutral. So it was obvious that people are not actually having conversations on Twitter. People are more they fight, they talk about things that don't matter instead of reaching that common ground, and that's a question that we're still trying to answer as well. Yeah, I think someone mentioned this just now, but one of the ways we can actually try and have a conversation is by listening and observing. Less talking, less trying to get your ideas out, but trying to consume more ideas in. And that is something that we need to learn how to do, because we can, we always think about consuming media, but taking out and those kind of information is also important as well.
Yeah. I mean, like,
Yes.
I think there's also aside from that, we also put aside the idea as well. So I think like we see this in TikTok platforms, for example, where we see there are a lot of curation based on threads, and kind of like putting that I mean, right now politics are merging onto the platform as well, but before that it was more of like just like a fun thing. And I think what's interesting is that it's grown from what used to be a parody of Instagram to becoming not just like a serious influencer marketing platform, but there's also the mitigation of politics. So like Malaysian politicians like Sheikh Sadeh joining the platform. And I mean, I'm interested to know whether it's an attempt to humanize and make them relatable in the public, which can't really be achieved from other social media platforms, in my opinion, such as Instagram and Twitter. Because like TikTok is definitely a much more fun platform, and so there's a tendency to portray less serious footage on TikTok. So do you think there's that boundary between them, or is it?
I think Daniel has to say something about it.
I have big
Yes,
issues with
politician.
politicians going on all these social media. I have big issues, TikTok, for example. It's also, I think what we touch on about is the medium, right? All these interactions basically with public figures who have more or less influence over the public life and even personal lives. Interactions are being mediated online, and different medium has different dynamics, right? TikTok's a bit more fun. Twitter now is toxic. Facebook is extremely conservative. So what are the outcomes of these interactions? There's a term I coined to call all this. I call this selfie politics. When a politician
Selfie
goes on,
politics.
when the politician goes online to show you that I'm sorry for vaping in parliament, or I'm sorry I stole 1.6 billion or whatever is it. That's not the same. It's not the same as your friend apologizing to you. Oh, sorry, bro, I forgot to send you this. Oh, sorry, this and all that. It's not the same, right? How can a public figure, or especially someone from the executive branch in the government, just apologize like a normal friend? But that's what social media is doing to our politics. It gives people, these politicians, to be. I'm focusing specifically on politicians, to apologize and just get away with things the way a friend does. But they're not our friends. I'm not friends with Muhyiddin and whatever, but he has influence over my life, and that's why the old notions of accountability and all that is very important, right? So that's number one. Number two is also what I view as, in the previous world, I guess. In the previous world, politicians are more or less thought leaders, right? Not only they are our elected public servants, they are also leaders. They give us opinions which we may or may not follow, but give us ideas, opinions, so more or less you need people of substance. Today's politics, you may not get that. You may get a breed of politicians who are not interested to talk about politics. They might talk about, what's the latest trend in fashion, in whatever is it, for example, you see a lot of people cycling, and then you see politicians cycling also, right? And most of these medias, for example, Facebook, when it started, it was cool. Young people go on it and all that, and then their parents and their aunts and their uncles started going on there, so they escaped to Twitter. and then politicians follow that. They were on Facebook, and then no one's really on Facebook anymore, and then they go to Twitter, and then they go to IG, and then they go to TikTok. And the funny thing is, so that is fine if it's just one way like this, but another way of going around is people who are not in politics, celebrity, religious figures, even influencers, even comedians. You get news this day more from comedians. So the people outside of politics are talking about political issues. The people in politics are not talking about political issues. They're deserting their stations. That's what I want to say. They are deserting their stations as thought leaders. They are transitioning to something else, semi-celebrity, semi-something. When people feel that void, they may not have the same restrictions or rules or basically norms of what the politicians were doing in the president world. Yeah, so that's why I have big issues when politicians tell me and they say things like, TikTok is the thing right now. You need to be on TikTok. You need to reach out to young people. But what do you have to say really? Is it about your cat? Well, you politician, especially if you're elected rep, as a thought leader, as a leader, politicians are doing public service.
Can I just playing devil's advocate for a moment? Okay.
Yes.
I agree with a lot of what you say, but in a way, media is an ever-evolving thing, right? So when newspapers first came about and hundreds of years ago, and so of course they used that as a way to disseminate information. And in a way, it was quite important because otherwise it's a cabal, right? The people know nothing. So the idea of the media of the journalists was to let you know what was going on behind those closed doors of the church, of the political elite, what was going on behind Parliament, behind the Senate. So they play that very important role. And of course, media has developed over the years from print to radio to TV to now social media. So I don't think if we can say, well, these are all, and politicians have always gone there as a way to connect to their
Followers.
Yeah, or let's call it their constituency, right? So, for example, Ronald Reagan was somebody who very early on, this is the beginning of that movement in American politics towards a public figure in this way. He was a movie star. He knew how to be on camera. He knew how to speak to people. He knew how to humanize things in some way. But even before that, FDR with his fireside chats, it was to actually be able to be thought leaders, but not to be in an ivory tower. So, of course, as the people use different media, wouldn't it be politicians being out of touch if they just said, well, we will not use the media that the rest of you use. We will only use print media. We will only use radio, because wouldn't that be them being out of touch? And I understand what you're saying about they're trivializing their work. As long as they are also doing the important work, like I think about Obama, he was also doing the important work and also being able to be on social media in a way that made him likable, human. He managed to get out some very important ideas using these other platforms. I think the problem is, as you say, is when they use it to apologize and to have a upper malu bosku kind of phenomenon, when it then is only for bad. But I don't see, for myself, I don't have a problem with cat videos, like Sadek's cat videos, because I think at the same time, he is also on social media trying to be a leader, trying to be a thought leader. So as long as you're playing both roles, it's only when, and of course, it's also been quite important for us to see who people really are. I mean, Bong Mokhtar posting photos of himself in his jacuzzi, let them eat cake. Makes us know, well, hold on, these politicians pretend to be so working so hard for you, but in fact, they're just working hard to get themselves another jacuzzi.
I think that I belong to the older school when it comes to power and politics. I think power should not be heard, seen so often.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's my stand there. I think it should not, for the simple reason that in order for power to be effective, for people to listen to it as an authority, you shouldn't trivialize it. Number one, you should not personalize it also, because we don't want to associate power with any one single person. We want to associate power with an institution. It's the institution of the Member of Parliament's office, the Assembly person's office, and so on and so forth. So So but then again, I also recognize the dilemma we are in right now, where your personal appeal plays a big part in democratic politics as well. That's fine, right? But the thing is, the trends in politics they're not set in stone. They're always shifting, right? From the older school, and then they change to the new one. So the new one, I would say we're more or less in the new one, and it's very chaotic. It's very messy. No one seems to have any authority, but at the same time, everyone seems to have a lot of authority. I think in those times, it's very important for one or two sources where we can go to for valid authoritative information. Yeah, so maybe then that's why you need a spectrum of politicians. You have the popular ones, fine. You have the not so popular ones, that's fine. You also have the conservative ones. Conservative as in, I'm talking about their approach and not the way they think, where they don't really appear a lot. They don't really go on TV and all that. They always talk about their work. They don't really share cat videos and all that, but that you can trust them. That when they put something out, it's already been thought of, it's already been reasoned, it's gone through the necessary channels, and that's your source. Yeah. So, and that I don't know if there's enough of them. Maybe you have, because things will go to the center a little bit. And now I think it's a bit too far off to the popular end of politics, where we have to be popular, we need to reach out to people, we need to wear colorful shirts and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question to Daniel, actually, because you're in Parti Muda, the up and coming youth party in Malaysia here, and from what I heard, there'll be no age limit for members of the party, and because it's not exclusively for young people, CC millennials, but it's also open to all ethnicities, which is not a race-based nor religious-based party. And my question is, do you think there will be an end to having the race card being played and the torch being passed down to youth to lead in the future? Because Sheikh Sadiq in Parliament, for example, even then he really got disrespected from party. So, yeah.
Okay, so first off, a bit about Parti Muda. We are not yet registered with ROS. So actually, I just saw the poster. I just noticed that under my name, it was Parti Muda. It should be Masa Kita. I don't speak for the party. I will join it. There's no party yet, on legally speaking. ROS has just yet to approve it. Actually, if you can change the poster to Masa Kita back, that would be great also. Because apparently there's some issues with the Societies Act if you put something that's not registered as some.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's yet to be registered. I don't speak for the party work. All the things I say is on my personal capacity. Okay. Sure, that's fairly straightforward. No, we don't discriminate. As a political party, it's not logical for you to discriminate people. And as a progressive one, I don't think we should either. Right? So no age limit on race and all that. So that's quickly done with. The second one is about the race card. It's difficult to get people to discard this way of thinking. It's also because of what's infringing on the historical context. Historically, it makes sense to trust people of your own kind because you live together. You get water together, you hunt together. It makes sense. But now that is quick. That word has gone. It's gone for a long time already. Actually, in fact, if you look at fraud cases, it's always people who speak the same language, who understands how you think exactly enough to con you. Right? If, for example, if I'm a UEC Chinapek and this Surau guy wants to cheat me, for example, it's not gonna work. I don't understand the word of Malay, and he doesn't understand Mandarin. It's not gonna work. No fraud's gonna happen in that situation, right? So that's not an issue. The issue is when people still find it easier to trust people of the same kind, from their own race, and thinking that that's the only way to trust people. And I think a vestiges of that has also filtered into identity politics, where we only trust people who we only trust me, basically. It's also very self-centered kind of view. So in that sense, I don't think race card is going to go very far, but that is also an opportunity. It's not going to go away very soon. It's also about that has presented opportunity for progressive parties, people that everyone is a Malaysian. We have a shared destiny in this country, in this land. If COVID is not handled properly, we're all gone. Doesn't matter which school you go to, which God you worship, you're all gone. right? I think that's the big task for any progressive front, to tell people basically that we share the common destiny. Right now, everyone thinks that, even it's the same for the migrant issue we talk about later. Everyone thinks that if we get the migrants out, we'll be better off. Really? In COVID, really, is that going to happen? That's not really going to happen, isn't it? Because it's infectious, So it's not, yeah. So to sum it up, basically, people also talk about race, and we get a lot of that kind of questions in our sessions. But among the young people, that's where the hope is. So um, when we go on this session, for example, last night I was with the East Coast, Pantai Timur of Kedah and Terengganu, and then Penang, Perlis, Kedah. It's always the 30s to talk about race. What is our stand on Petona Melayu? What is Bumi Putra and all that? But the young people don't talk about that. I think the young people it's easier to persuade them that we share the common destiny. And it's also because maybe some of them live in the city where if you're in the LRT and you're holding on for stability, and you look around you, there's a Chinese girl, there's a Malay guy, there's an Indian lady, everyone's in the LRT, everyone is tired from work, everyone wants to go back and Netflix or whatever. That's common destiny.
Yeah, but the thing is, you say this as if it's new, but it's not new. I mean, when On Jafar wanted to have a sense of Malaysia many years ago, he saw it as being as multinational, multiracial, multicultural. PKR, PSM, these have always been part. DAP, been around a long time. They've always advocated for this. The last government, which came in 2018, came in on this platform. We were all hopeful because, okay, finally an end to racial politics. This is not new now, what Muda is saying. Okay. But yet each time it has come up, and I think the big hope in 2018 was like, okay, finally now in power in a big way. And yet race politics did not disappear. In fact, if anything, we saw people were using race politics in order to destabilize that government, to say, well, you see, they've got this Chinese party, really, the Chinese people are trying to take advantage of you. So I don't think Parti Muda is offering anything new. I think that it's again somebody saying, and I think this is important, somebody saying, isn't that what we want? And I think not just young people want it, old people want it. A lot of the people who want it want it. It doesn't matter what age you are. The people who don't want it, the ones who benefit from a system which is racialized politics, don't want it. But I've seen this happening at so many points in our political history, and now it's happening again. How will this be? How will it play out? Is the question. Will people be strong enough? I mean, to try to change things radically? Because again, in 2018 and the lead up after that, the problem was that it was always, oh, well, we can't do this yet. We have to be practical. We have to give in to this. We have to, there's the practicalities of politics, because nobody was going to make the radical decisions that needed to be made. So I wonder whether Muda is going to be able to do that as well, of course.
Okay.
Because we can all be holding the strap in the LRT, but we've been holding that strap for like 40 years, 50 years already.
Okay. Well, I'm not familiar with that part of history, but the political parties you mentioned, DAP and PSM, they have their own baggage, come with baggage. And that baggage has been...
Everybody will get baggage.
Everyone will get baggage, So basically, we choose what baggage we want, right? As of now, we have decided that we want to be hitched on to this baggage, where we will come out in the open and say, we don't really care what race or religion you are, but we want to represent your voices and your concerns in life. I think what I get from a lot of people is that when they say they want new ideas, basically, there's nothing much new under the sun. It's going back to the fundamentals, right? That's why I kept repeating the word shared common destiny. That's not a new idea. So many people have been talking about it. You're totally right, but no one has been able to represent it. Everyone is talking about it. No one is doing it, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. We are trying to represent those people at the LRT, right? And the way the public, right, the way they think about politics, from my observation, they only think about the options on the table, right? So anything that's outside the table is considered, deviant or radical. So, and that is the baggage with, for example, people like parties like the AP and PSM. Oh, you're a socialist? Oh my God, you're communist. Oh, you are Chinese and communist? That's worse. So that's something we're trying to change.
And that's also
Find-
people not knowing their history and people not.
Yeah, not yeah. That also.
But I think DAP is often gets stigmatized as being a Chinese party, and yet if you look at their history, you can see a lot of they've never been a Chinese party. They've always had strong Malay leaders, strong Indian leaders. Same with PSN. But I think, and for me, it's about who is then trying to paint these parties with these different colors and why. Because the same thing will happen with Muda, right? If you're not careful, you will get called a Malay party because it's a lot of like Malay leaders at the top, or because of Syed Saddiq. So I don't know. I do feel that we've had a lot of multiracial parties and who have worn their multiracial identity very proudly, and yet we haven't been able to change the majority of the people. And I think what's happening in Sabah is very interesting now, because I think Sabah and Sarawak are completely different, have completely different identity politics. So what's going to happen there is going to be, I think, very significant.
A few things have. Sorry. Oh, do I respond to that? Or?
Because it's okay. I'll proceed with the next. Sorry. So we're talking about diversity. So I want to ask Utaya actually, because your work is primarily in DM, and like about experience of diversity in Malaysian literature. Do you think that the level of inclusivity or diversity in Malaysian literature dah evolve ke, tukar ke, and if they are, do you mind like telling us about it?
Okay, the good thing being a writer is that you get a chance to poke your nose into all other issues, including politics, which we are heatedly discussing just now. It's interesting to know that, when we have politicians who are the policy makers and people are waiting for changes, we tend to forget that there are other areas. Daniel mentioned the word the third force, where the commoners can also make a change. When we see Jo becoming, not herself, but becoming the MP to criticize the politicians, or she becomes what's the name, Purple?
Ravina Berry.
Ravina Berry. She becomes another identity to represent the people. Goes back to the earlier discussion about TikTok. I really get upset when I see politicians going on TikTok and being themselves and making fun of themselves, either on TikTok or in person on stage dancing to MGR songs, for example. Because they don't know, these politicians, they don't know how to differentiate between being a politician, a policy maker, a voice of the government, than being themselves as a person. This is where writers or people in theater, whichever field they are, the arts and literature, we can make a change because we realize what is actually happening. We understand the diversity, we understand the xenophobia. From our discussion here, we are all well informed about what is actually happening. We are not relying on our PA to give us information. We are there in the middle of what is happening. Theo mentioned about being in the LRT, and we see people from different races, different religion, different background. We are among them. So back to your specific question about being a writer. Yes, if we look into Bahasa literature in particular, things hasn't changed much since I would say since 1920s. That's when we had the first Sastra Melayu Modern. Research shows that Malay writers have a problem. It's a quote-unquote problem in talking about other races, because of the baggage that they have, because they are not aware of what is happening among the other Malaysians. This is a fact, okay? I'm not accusing anyone. This is fact based on what they have written. And when a non-Malay comes forward to write, for example, when Munshi Abdullah has Indian blood, when he wrote, we had other people, Rahim Kajai, coming forward to say that no, he is not a Malay because he's Darah India, or they use the word Keling, Darah Keling. So they were normally denied the right to speak on behalf of everybody. But thank God, things has changed since the 70s. We had more non-Malay writers writing in Bahasa Malaysia. Of course, I'm not touching about those who are writing in English. We have a plenty of number of writers who are also known international level. They're doing a wonderful job. But I'm specifically talking about non-Malay writers, Malaysian writers who write in Bahasa Malaysia, and they're able to portray the multicultural the topics that we are talking here about, how politics is influencing us, or how politicians are dividing us, how we need to know each other, to appreciate the difference, to get rid of xenophobia. All these topics, including TikTok, I would say, is being addressed by writers, because indirectly the writers are supposed to represent the people. So politicians, let's remember that politicians are not the only people to represent us. We ourselves.
Yeah.
Jo through her theater, Nabila through her research, either under Project Dialogue or her own initiative. Same goes to Sing Fei and Daniel Teo. Even though he is in Muda, but he himself as a person has his own responsibility. He realizes what is needed for the community. I would say that the more we rely on politicians alone, that is when we are doomed. As Rose said, yes, we have been there for 40, 50, 60 years hoping for changes to be made by the politicians, which did not happen. We were expecting it to happen in 2018. It did not. Even after that, and we are going through MCO together as a nation, as commoners, as people, with the kita tolong kita, we are helping each other. This should give us a realization that we are here to help each other, using whatever tool that we have. If you are a singer, please go ahead, sing the praise of unity, the diversity. If you are an NGO working with migrant workers, please make everyone understand that migrants are also people. That's actually what we are already doing. Jo uses a theater to talk about the diversity, the unity, and all the social issues. She makes fun of the politicians, not just to talk bad about politicians, but to make people realize that, yes, I'm not quoting, yes, politicians are comedians. So you can't rely forever on comedians to make changes in our life. That is exactly what writers are doing. The only difference is that it's in black and white, it's in written form. So we have to be very careful. When I say we, I'm referring to writers. Since it's written black and white, it's not just on Twitter or on Facebook, or it's not just a speech given as a media conference where the next day I can say, oh, I was misquoted, right? You can blame the media. But here it's in written form. Each and every word written by the writer represents him or herself, their idea, their thought, and their critique towards the community. So yes, we did not have this advantage in the 50s, 60s because of the different language. Indians were writing. Please remember that we have a minimum number of 1,000 Indian writers writing in Tamil. Those are the full-time writers, and we have more than 2,000 people who are part-time writers. The problem is that they write solely in Tamil. So no matter how much they write, it's being read by people who are able to understand Tamil, either in Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, or India. And when we write in English, yes, that's wonderful because we bring our issues forward for the whole world to see. Okay, that's wonderful. And same goes to those who are writing in Mandarin or any other Chinese languages, or in Punjabi for that matter. But for the national culture, sastra kebangsaan, without denying the right to write in any language, the moment we write in Bahasa Malaysia, the responsibility is there, because we understand that whatever we write is not going to be read by somebody from London or from America. It's going to be Malaysian or Singaporean, Brunei, a few other people in Indonesia. So we are more grounded to the Malaysian issues, and it can be easily understood by everyone. Even a person who's English educated would still be able to read. So I would say that let's use whatever platform that we have as an individual or as a group to go forward because we understand the meaning of diversity, we understand the negative effect of xenophobia. Let us, and those who are watching us now, there are 38 people here. I'm sure that we can move forward. We can make a change. It can start in a small scale to put forward to say that, yes, we can make the change that we want to happen in this society.
And I feel that on social media as well, I think like what you mentioned, I think on social media there are a lot, for example, Klima Action Malaysia kami, their infographics, their captions are all in Malay language, because they do like realize that, you know, like whoever reads them will be like Malaysians, and they're trying to highlight that issue of climate change, environment, and the climate change emergency, for example. And
yes, I would have to mention Dr. Ambiga. Yes, when she started with a movement, she realized that she wanted her birthday idea to reach everyone. So she took special Bahasa Malaysia class for a year. I can vouch for that because I was a teacher. See, she took the initiative to learn Bahasa Malaysia because she knows whatever idea that she wants to put forward to the people is not only for people who the urban dwellers who understand English, but she wants it to reach even the makcik in kampung. That's what we need our politicians to do. Well, not only politicians, everyone. If Muda, if you really want to reach out to the people, please have your platform also in Bahasa Malaysia, without denying the other languages.
Well, it's an interesting thing about diversity, right? So diversity doesn't need to mean that we need to reach to everybody. It means that we need to speak what we need to speak. And I think that sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking it is about the majority and it is about everybody. But if we have a country which is multicultural, politically, diverse, maybe sometimes we make the mistake of thinking we need to do something that will reach everybody, as opposed to just being authentic to ourselves and creating something for people who are interested in what it is that we do. So an artist may decide to make a certain kind of work which is for a very limited audience. Doesn't mean that work is any less important. You may decide to work with a small group of, let's say, homeless people because you think that's what's important to you. That doesn't make the work any less important. And I think sometimes with the idea of diversity, it isn't about everyone having the same opinion. It's about everybody having very different opinions and very different interests, which they are spending their time kind of on. You know?
Yes, I totally agree, Joe. Yeah, let me make myself clear that when I say that let's make it's accessible, it doesn't mean that we are thinking of each and every person. For example, Joe, when you presented Para recently online, of course, it was not meant for each and everyone to be able to watch it, but you made it available. You see that it was accessible, so that whoever is interested, they have a mean of watching it and enjoying it and understanding the issue. That's what I mean. So
in the case of Para, actually that was one instance where actually it really was about trying to reach out, because we wanted to have, like, our tickets were 5 ringgit, the cheapest tickets were 5 ringgit, and it was in Malay, and it was people from 20 countries could log in, and 20 countries did log in and watch it. But I think that was saying, with this project we want to reach as many people as possible. But sometimes I want to do something which I think is not for a huge population. It doesn't have to be, but
exactly.
But I think, like, for example, otherwise I think we can tend to have something which is where things get de-intellectualized, if that's such a word. That I think is also important for intellectuals to speak to each other, to sort of like deepen intellectual thought. It isn't always about having a populist dialogue. Sometimes I think it is about having a kind of non-populist dialogue. Those things are also important. Yeah. So we need to allow each of those things. I think for me that's what diversity is about. Is allowing all these different ways of having dialogue.
Yep. I totally agree. I agree with you, Joe. Yeah, we have to know the difference when we want an exclusive discussion and also an inclusive discussion. For example, here we have 5 panelists only. People might question where are people from the other political parties, for example. But there is a reason why Project Dialogue and Khatijah decided to only have 5 of us here for this discussion, and there are people watching us and listening to us and sharing their opinion. So yes, I agree with what Joe says. Those are the things that we have to be very clear about, rather than saying that I want to go on TikTok so that everybody can watch me dance. Going back to what Daniel mentioned just now.
Okay, then I have a question for Utaya and Daniel, because both of you mentioned that you disagree that, politicians going on TikTok and stuff like that. But for me, I'm not just trying to justify them, but I think I understand the rationale behind their actions is because they want to reconnect with the young audience. They're trying to get the young audience to relate to them. So if you disagree with them being on TikTok, then how else can they reconnect with the younger audience?
Okay, it's like you see, they want to be, they want to get in touch with the younger audience. So you see, I used Joe as an example just now. Joe as herself, Joe as the MP character, and Joe as the Rabina. So she knows that when I'm talking about this issue, I'm not going to be talking about as Joe Kukatas, but I'll be talking about this character. Same thing with this politician. If they are going to be dancing for a Tamil song, for example, they don't have to do it as the official politician. You see, it'll be wonderful to show off their cat, but let's not show your cat and say, okay, let me talk about my party. No, they should know the difference when they're going as a person, a human, to show maybe in the TikTok they'll be singing or dancing or talking about their cat, or about their wife, or their cooking, talking about their husband, their family, fine. But each video which is uploaded should clearly be understood that, okay, this is him or her talking as a politician, and the other video is just him or her having a good time singing and dancing. That's what I understand, and that's what I'm emphasizing here.
This question, Abila, is greatly debated among the younger YBs, and sometimes when we go out, we debate about that. They'll ask me the same question also. I'm not, and I understand when they say there's a need to go there and all that. Yeah, of course the market is there. You want to connect to the young people and all. That's fine. I'm not saying, I'm not prescribing fixed rules on what we should or shouldn't do. I just want to talk about the effects of what we're doing. That much, I think people. Sometimes people in politics, right? We don't have time to think about the effects of our actions. We really don't. There's 100 people screaming for our attention. We have to balance between 50 persons who have the same problem and the other 50 who have 50 different little problems, right? So we don't really have time to think about that. So that's why we rely on people like Joe and Utaya, who focus on area of the horizon that we're not focusing on. That's very important, right? And especially the YBs, they don't have time. They really don't have. The way politics is structured in Malaysia, someone dies, you gotta go. Someone divorces, you gotta go. You gotta show up. Yeah, people always think it's kampung politics, but it's the same in PJ, in Subang, and all that. Also, people expect that of their elected reps, right? So it's important that the people around the YB also has people who focuses on less focused areas of the horizon, things of Utaya or the works of Joe. So yes, TikTok is fine, if you use it for communication and all that. But I also think that jumping into the lighter side of politics, like TikTok and all that, without fundamentals, without understanding separation of power, without understanding how legislature works or how the judiciary works, how many layers of the court structure we have, without all those, it becomes very, very what's happening in America right now, I don't know what to call it, Trumpism or whatever. People just think that the YB say, the YB decides, the YB gets things done, that's it. And then a TikTok is produced and the issue is over. That's not really how I understand things. That's not how I observe things work. No effect of our actions. Yeah.
I think, sorry, I know earlier I questioned this, but I really have come to understand what you mean, actually, listening to you now. And I think, like for example, you're right. Sometimes when the politician is using social media so freely, it's hard to sift through all that stuff to know what's important to them. And I think about, like, for example, people like Charles Santiago, how he uses social media. You know, there's a problem which has come out. He will come up with a good statement. He will deal with it directly. You take him seriously. In a way that I think you don't take a lot of other politicians seriously who are constantly on social media just making light of everything.
And to add another dimension to that, this is a boom for younger politicians. Because if you're going to make this a career, you have 10, 20 years ahead of you. You can't be dancing for 10, 20 years, you know. You can't. That's a problem for young politicians in specific. Older ones, they do it and then they die, whatever. But the younger ones, how are you going to face yourself? How are you going to position yourself in the national political market in the next 10 to 20 years? Because we want our youth to be involved, right? But we don't equip them. We don't caution them on the effects of what they're doing now. Right?
There is a wonderful, I've been trying to find this wonderful photograph of Tugul Abdul Rahman, one of him dancing, and another one which I saw somewhere and I forgot to save it, of him using a hula hoop, you know. And I think there's a balance, right? Isn't there?
Politician, yes.
I think it's very interesting how a lot of you guys mentioned that whenever you talk about TikTok, it's always associated with dancing. I don't know how or why a lot of you guys came to the conclusion that TikTok is just dancing. But you know, as for me, I look at TikTok in a bigger picture, right? It's right now, if you look at it, youth are getting much more politically involved than ever through TikTok. Although not directly talking about the issues that are present right now, they are incorporating a lot of political issues and political commentary into the social media trends right now. So a lot of them are passive as well. It does not necessarily have to directly address the issue, but youth nowadays can also incorporate a lot of their voices into the dancing and the social media trends as well. And this is what I find very interesting with TikTok, because it's not just a platform where people have fun, but also a platform where people can actually sustain political discourse as well. And this is it's something that we always overlook at, but it constantly happens on TikTok right now.
When Facebook and Twitter and all that, when they first came on the scene, that's what people said about them also. Right? Yeah. Facebook is not about cat videos. Facebook is about political discourse. 5 years later, Facebook is so damn toxic and all that. So that's why that's what I'm talking about. In 5 years later, is it still the same thing as it was? What are the effects if it's not? What are the effects if it is? So that's why I brought it here. I don't talk like this, you know, when in my daily work with investors or people and all that, because they wouldn't go to that level. But here, I want us to think about it and you know, maybe caution people who will listen.
Sorry, I would like to just remind the audience that you are free to ask questions in the ask the question below. And I just want to add something to Nabila and Sinfei, actually, because I think on TikTok and in songs especially, I think there are also a new kind of element, I guess, coming up, which is dark futurism, which is a dark, sad, even horror-inspired aesthetic that's reflected in artists today. So the prevalence of it in Billie Eilish, for example, where the lyrics can be sad or depressing, but yet has an upbeat tone to the song, or even the rise of like alternate subcultures of fashion like e-boy or e-girl fashion. And do you think it reflects today's generation, mine included, where in a way we're just holding out a facade, yet not so afraid to voice out what used to be deemed as taboo topics such as mental health at the same time? And do you think that it's unique to our generation alone, or will it be upcoming, or, you know?
I think talking about generation right now, there are a lot of platforms available for a lot of people to actually express their thoughts, right? You have Twitter, you can express your thoughts through words. You have Instagram that can express your thoughts through pictures, but TikTok as well, you can do all of that simultaneously, which is why I think that when you mention TikTok and the concept of dark futurism in it, you notice there's a lot of youth, they always tend to incorporate dark humor into TikTok. It's sort of kind of humanizing some of these taboo topics. For example, people would actually make jokes about being an orphan. It's not, if you look at it in a surface level, it's a very terrible thing, right? Being an orphan. But right now, youth are trying to humanize it a little bit, and I find that very interesting in a sense where on TikTok, a lot of people, they don't take things seriously nowadays. A lot of jokes are being I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because there's a lot of content going on nowadays where people sort of trauma bonding. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on right now, and especially because of the accessibility to the software and to the apps that we have right now, social media. That is also one of the reasons why people are more keen to, talking about taboo topics in a way.
Thank you, Nabila. And I just want to ask, like, the last question. I mean, I think Sasha Amira also asked this question. Thanks, Sasha. So it's about the contestation of cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation. So such an example would be that such as Mira Filza, where she shared pictures of herself on Instagram dressed in an outfit for a contact lens ad, and she was seen donning the lehenga and the nose ring, and which really, because I feel that cultural appropriation is such a westernized ideal that has been brought out in Malaysia, and I feel that us, wearing each other's outfits are seen as like one of the essence of being Malaysian, and but there's also the cultural appreciation, sorry, where we see Mira Filza being compared to Yuna, who used Indian talents and business owners for her Not the Love of My Life music video, and is viewed as appropriating the culture. And this cross-cultural expression of wearing each other's traditional clothing, like what I said, is the essence of being Malaysian. And do you think this will be erased as moral policy increases in our attempt to be seen as woke today in today's society? And what do you guys think about the whole Mira Filza issue? Yeah.
I would say it's a non-issue, actually. That's it.
I think a good way to actually understanding what's cultural appropriation and appreciation is very simple. You look at the intention. If you have the intention to do certain things, it's obvious in your actions. So in this sense, if you look at it in the intention perspective, if you are advertising for a contact lens, why are you dressed in that costume? I mean, in the first place, right? So I think always ask yourself, what is the intention behind it, and always be conscious about it. So I think, because a lot of people say there's always a line between appreciation and appropriation, and the line is very thin, and it's up to your individual responsibility to actually practice it as well.
I don't think it's, for myself, I don't think it's that simple, because I think that it's because there's a lot of moral policing going on, a lot of people deciding where the line is. So who decides where the line is? I think that, it wasn't something I particularly wanted to talk about, because I think it's been so hotly debated, and I think it's kind of, as you said, it's all these topics which come up and then they die away, and nobody ever goes into them very deeply, and then people feel aggrieved that they weren't gone into deeply enough. So I think it's not right of us to say it's a non-issue, because I think that's to say then everything's a non-issue, because just let the issue go away. But I think that for me, the more important thing is to ask why it created so much heartache, why it created so much questioning over that issue, and was that happening a symptom of something else, right? So why did it gain any traction at all is an important question to ask. And of course, the thing is, I do believe that we have sometimes imported wholesale some kind of words or concepts from other places.
Ideology is ideology.
It's not necessarily ideologies even. I think sometimes they're not even ideologies. Sometimes I do feel that they are buzzwords a little bit. And I think the person who first said, called it cultural appropriation, didn't expect for it to sort of escalate. Because there it was actually quite a complex thing, because was she appropriating that person's culture? Not really, because she was actually using North Indian culture, not Tamil culture. This person was of Tamil descent. She was also quite clear that she was using her inspiration was a particular movie by a particular Bollywood star, Aishwarya Rai, and that she was interested in Aishwarya Rai's eyes. So that's why she wanted to use that thing for contact lenses. So she felt, okay, I'm going to advertise contact lenses. I really love how Aishwarya Rai's eyes look here. So I'm going to use that as a way to, and she loves Aishwarya Rai's work and she loves Bollywood film. So I think there too, her intention was not appropriation. She was, okay, I have a chance, I have to do this ad. I may as well do the ad for something that I really love.
Yes.
And do it in a way with using something I really love. So then it's different. It's not, I'm not going to do something just because I want to make money out of it. She could have made that ad using some other form and then had no pushback whatsoever. So that's when it becomes very difficult, because how do you know what somebody's intention is? They only can tell you what their intention is, but there's a lot of people reading into her intention. So if you say, and I heard a lot of people saying, oh, if you make money from it, then it's appropriation. If you don't, then it's appreciation. For me, that's much too simplistic. And if you have the right intention, then it's okay. But if you don't, then it isn't. Again, how do you know what is somebody's intention? So I feel that, I mean, I have no answers for this, right? But I do feel that at the same time, there is something to be said about maybe using it as an opportunity to know why people got upset. And I think that people got upset because the Indians in Malaysia, feeling as a marginalized community, to think, well, we only get in the news when it's something like this. But at the same time, for myself as an Indian, I did feel, wow, I wish there was so much energy and news expended when serious things happened to Indian people, when people like Kugan were beaten in the police station, when he died, when he was killed. When I think about all the Indians men who have died in lockup. And I think, where were those voices then? So I felt a bit upset by this what happened, because I felt, why is everybody making so much noise here? Where were all those voices when serious things were happening to Indian people? Where those voices talking about serious things were happening to Indians elsewhere? What's happening to real discussions about poverty that's going on, amongst, let's say, urban Indian populations, what's happening to the ones who have got left behind in plantations. These are real problems. And I kind of felt, again, it all got lost in the noise. It all got lost in the distraction, and that upsets me. Yeah.
See, Joe explained wonderfully. I made it very simple by saying it's a non-issue. So when I use the term non-issue, that's exactly what Joe wonderfully explained. You see, there must be a reason why that particular artist was wearing in such a way, and where were these people to talk about the real issues regarding Indians?
No, I'm not saying that. Sorry, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that about the artists who did that. I'm saying all the people who jumped into the conversation. And I thought what was interesting was that there was a lot more people talking about this issue than they ever were talking about actual, much more severe issues facing Indian people in Malaysia.
Yeah,
I just wish there was a commensurate amount of concern for other issues.
Of the artist promoting her contact lens wearing as an Indian artist is a non-issue. But the issue here is the reaction that we got from the public. And to take it further, as Joe mentioned, well, if people are able to make so much noise of this issue, why did we not make any noise when there were real issues regarding the Indian community?
Was this issue brought on Twitter or Instagram? It was mostly on Twitter, right?
Yeah,
So maybe
Twitter.
that is why also one of the reasons why people were jumping on her, because herd mentality, in a sense. Not a lot of people actually knew the behind the scenes of what happened, but mostly a lot of people just understood it as cultural appropriation instead of like understanding where she's coming from and her intentions. Because I believe that she posted her picture few weeks ago, but it was only brought up by a Twitter user few days after that. So it's interesting to see how people actually reacted to that issue.
Yeah, I think it depends on the platforms, isn't it? At the end of the day, like being used to advocate for specific, utilize for specific things, and then another platform utilize for different things. And I think that I want to address Denise punya question here in the chat. As discussed earlier, how does communication online has become more and more polarized, and how do we encourage more people to have a more nuanced conversation?
I think I'll take that. I think this question is heavily related to what we have discussed just now about politicians going online as well, whether dancing or not, trivializing issues or not. The situation is that even politicians are fighting for the attention right now in the digital public sphere. In a battle with other initiatives, whether it is cultural initiatives, whether it's business, fighting for the attention of the general people or the people. So we are in a situation where what we have called noise is really the national consciousness has broken down. We have so many choices right now, and for conversation to become more nuanced, deeper, more authentic, I think it is important, and this is not a moral category, but a productive category. I would say it is important to be self-honest. From our discussion just now as well about Mira Filzar thing, if you are aware of your intention when doing a certain thing, then you should not be afraid at all. At all. So and what Utaya has been saying, that everyone has a specific community to be concerned about. So if that issue is also, Daniel Teo has mentioned way earlier, if that issue is not really directly related to your cause, then maybe you do not have to touch it in a way, right? So for conversations to be more nuanced, to be more productive, to be more of quality online today, I think it is important that we be self-honest and to understand why we want to comment on certain things, and if it is even necessary for us to touch on certain things. So if I'm concerned with migrant workers, the plight of migrant workers issue, I'm not going to talk about Mira Filzar case because that is not my struggle. Right? Authentically, that is not my struggle at all. That is not my fight. Right. So if I can, I want to share a story. So I recently, just weeks ago, it's a very weird experience. Weeks ago, for my research work, I had to interview Borneo Comrade, an initiative from Sabah. I interviewed two of their leading figures lah. Their sort of project managers, Mukmin Nantang and Syah Wan Shakila, and they share about their community building experience, and then their work in Sabah, and I sort of felt that fear, not fear in the negative sense, but in a positive sense, that wow, this is so authentic. You work on a specific cause, and you don't touch things that don't really matter to you. You don't have to be so toxic about everything. Right? Like you do authentic things for a specific, even if small cause, for the betterment of Malaysian, or for the future of Malaysia or Malaysian diversity. So I think self-honesty is very important in this case, and then you commit to a specific cause, something like
exactly.
I just want to ask Sing Fei, do you think that the reason why people are not having honest conversations is because of the culture that we have right now, referring to how cancelling culture, relating to cancelling culture as well. We are living in a culture where we cannot make mistakes, and we cannot be experimental, and we cannot do risk taking, or else be condemned for our actions. So if let's say if somebody was to talk about an issue that they honestly care about, if that issue is let's say cancel worthy, then would that discourage them from talking about conversations about that honestly that matters to them?
I think this cancel culture sort of phenomenon, and that, as well as the Malaysians that are involved in it, I mean Malaysians who are cancelling discussions on specific issues, are related to, you know, the dark futurism that, you know, we alluded to earlier, in the sense that we don't really have, even to discussions about, you know, the difference between leaders, political leaders of the nation, as well as, you know, politicians become our friends these days, is that it is difficult for us to focus on a particular case or a particular cause or a particular fight anymore. You know, things are so condensed or intense right now, information, the flow of information. So we have a wide variety of choice, and it is not easy for young people today to find your cause. So Jo, for example, has focused on theater for many years in her life, and then Utaya has been writing. But you know, so they do specific things, and they do well in specific things. They don't try to touch on everything. They don't try to cover everything, right? They don't try to fight for everything. Oh, I want to fight for this. I want to fight for that. I'm the champion of the world, something like that. I'm the true justice warrior, something like that. So I think young people today, it is difficult for young people today to fight for a specific cause, or to commit him or herself into a struggle. So they try to have that kind of pressure on themselves to show that, oh, I'm concerned. I'm not doing anything. I'm
I think
doing
that's
something.
the woke culture that a lot of
Yeah.
I think there's also performative activism.
yeah.
Where you try to, you know, where you just share, you know, information, infographics on social media, and then you know, just to be seen as woke, but you don't exactly advocate for them, you know. Yeah.
That's a very interesting observation, actually, Cynthia. I hadn't thought of it in that way. But I think what for me is very interesting about this is that, and I think it's different from being just woke. It's because actually people do feel a need, a genuine need,
Yes.
to care. And I think that's really important. It's very easy to say, oh, they're just all woke. But I think wokeness, as we see as a negative thing, is when people just want to perform, as you say, caring.
There is a goodwill. There is a goodwill behind it.
And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge as well. But I think that then maybe when people don't really know what it is that they care about deeply enough, and so they want to be on trend, maybe this is where they become a bit lost, and therefore angry and all the rest of it. But the way I see it happening in other places, I mean, I have a lot of family. My sisters all live abroad, and their children live abroad, and I see my young nephews and nieces becoming, they're quite focused in what it is that they care about. You know, and I'm really often very taken by how focused they are. I thought, well, I was never this focused when I was young, you know, and they care very deeply about climate. They care very deeply about or politics in terms of making sure that they are going to be well represented by people who have good ideals, and I'm actually quite surprised and delighted when I see how focused young people can be, you know, especially about, as I said, things which I think they think as being very big. So you're not going to find a young person who's interested in climate change be interested or about other stuff because climate change is too big for you to start worrying about other smaller things as well.
And that is where it's important for our policymakers, our lawmakers, to have the discipline and the focus, like what Joe said, the focus and the discipline to refrain from joining. Because all this while, people are like that. You know, as human beings, we want to be seen as nice people who care about other people. We don't want to be seen as psychopaths. You know, that's very normal, right? But caring about an issue is one thing, but solving it the way that will solve the issue, that's for our leaders to do. And that is where, when you're too preoccupied with the popularity, where you join in expressing, and if that's the only thing you do, you're deserting your post. You're not doing your job, really. So that's my issue with people who chase popularity in politics, but they don't chase policies. That's the problem.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking today that in Malaysia, we have more politics than we actually have government.
I think there's also I feel like today, especially in the digital age right now, I feel like the conversations, it can either be too intense or it can be watered down as well. There's no, like mentioned earlier, there's no kind of like middle ground, where there's like for example, on Reddit, you see that there are, subreddits where it provides people with a relatively safer space to talk about in comparison to Twitter. So that's also interesting to note.
And that is because there's no one building the center. Historically, it's always been leaders in power. Because I mean, for example, when the opposition, right, when they have never won power. They only, in 2018 only they started to become the power in Putrajaya. And it was a cultural shock, I can tell you. When I went to the Youth and Sports Ministry as a special officer, it was a cultural shock because suddenly you have to govern this huge bunch of people in the middle who really did not care what your party is. They want the issues resolved. Even when I was campaigning, female candidate, and one of the guys actually told me, he said, why do you all keep saying that? I say what? I keep saying that, the she is a he, and because I don't care. All I care is my rukun tetangga get money. And I was like, oh wow, that's really, smack to our face, right? So that's the cultural shock that people in power will tend to experience, and it's good. It's a good kind of cultural shock because it forces you to be moderate. Even a good example will be PAS right now, very radical because they've been outside of the system. The moment they're in government, no one talks about anything that they will be talking about, right? So that's the thing we should also realize about the way the power being in power has on people, because suddenly you have to govern this huge bunch of people who really don't care who you are, your parties are. They want the issues resolved. Right.
Which I think Uttaya's point earlier as well, that we can't just rely on politicians or those in government, that in fact society is changed by a lot of other people, academics, artists, thinkers, intellectuals of every stripe, NGO workers. And that's what, then we build a civil society which will work together with politicians and influence politicians as well, because politicians are traditionally people who go with their weather vanes, right? Which is, and if they think, well, that's what people want, we will give that people what they want.
More so recently.
Yeah. But I think that's important because I think that's where they have to listen to civil society leaders. They have to listen to NGOs who have the interests of specific groups at heart. And they have to be better listeners, I think. They don't have to be, and then they will implement the policies, and that's their job, to carry out the policies. And
a bit difficult to listen when you're always dancing, no?
Which makes me think, when we look at statements made by politicians or what are things that they're doing, do they actually have a think tank? Because think tank is where the real people, the non-politicians, come in with ideas to tell them this is what needs to be done. This TikTok is no, but TikTok with a cat is okay. So there has to be somebody to put some sense into a politician. And Sing Fei and Nabila mentioned that yes, youth are becoming more concerned. They know more. And Joe and Daniel mentioned how the youth are very concerned about issues. we would love to see this youth, not directly, they don't have to be in any political party, but at least these thinking people can play a role in a think tank, at least to guide the politicians so that they won't become a laughing stock. But do they have do we have think tanks? Do
What
we?
I notice is politicians get into trouble, become laughing stocks when they try to convince you that they're your friend. That's when they fail. Because
Yeah.
honestly, when it comes to governance issue, for example, just last week there's an issue in my boss's kawasan, a flyover, right? The residents there organized, they were really protested against a flyover constructed by this private company and all that. And I was amazed because it's such a boring issue. Flyover, are you kidding me? But people organized and people got angry about it, right? And my boss went in because the councillor couldn't handle it. My boss went in and he's like, okay, this is how we do it, and the whole issue was done. Like, no TikTok was produced from said event, nothing, right? So I think that's the problem when politicians try to be part of part of the funny bunch and all that, trying to be cool and all that. When it comes to governance issues, like I said, those residents who are protesting, they don't care about Parti Muda, Parti Tua, whatever, Rocket or Pas or Bulan, whatever, they don't care. They just don't want the flyover in their kampong, full stop. Right? So it's up to the other leader to come to the middle and say, okay, this is why we need the flyover. We understand your concerns. We try to resolve that, but the flyover needs to be there. How can we do that? How can we come to the middle ground? Right? And so that's where your think tank. And if you're in power, you have your government agencies. If you're in opposition, you have civil society. You have your network to talk to. So that's what I meant when I say leaders should be in the middle. You construct the middle because people will have their different opinions. Even the other side of civil society would be, the far right groups also. They also have their own opinions. How do we pull everyone to the middle and say, look, this is it. This is acceptable. This is tolerable. And everyone said, yeah, this is fine. Okay, whatever.
I think that the definition of what it means to be a leader today, I think is also very much blurred out in comparison to before this, in the traditional sense where you know what are the qualities of a leader, but we see today, they're on TikTok and you're like, oh, is this what it means to be a leader today, or is it like there's that unsure? And if anything, I feel that I think as we get to the end of the forum, because we have 9 minutes left, but I feel that I like to take an interview direct online with Joe actually. It's actually, and I would like to add on that it's not just the politics in this country that makes you question your identity, but rather it's also the evolution of the digital age in a way that you should not have to question it at all in the first place with like social standpoints and etc. So and thanks guys for joining this forum. Thank you very much. Really appreciate, and thank you to the audience as well for joining. So if you guys have any plugins, let me know. But aside from that, this forum will also be made available on Project Dialogue's YouTube channel right after this. So to those who are interested to re-watch it, feel free to do so. And thank you, Daniel, Singfei, Joe, Taya, Nabila for joining me today, and thank you to the audience as well. And thanks, guys. So like to end it there.
Thanks everybody for such a frank
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
me. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.